Otis was a singer, he was a musician, he was a showman, and he became one of the first artists to own their own publishing, which was very unusual, even white or black acts, particularly black acts. You know, he became a producer and actually received his first gold record for his production instead of his own record. And that was a song called Sweet Soul Music by Arthur Cummings. If you ever listen to that song, when you listen to horns, I don't know how many of you ever watched Western movies, but there was a movie called Magnificent Seven. And as they're riding back into the town, you hear these horns going dun, 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 dun. Well, if you listen to Sweet Soul Music, you see we always got it dun, dun, dun. It's right there. But we got it in the Marlboro commercial because there was a Marlboro commercial that had it before that. That's where we saw it. And when we claimed publishing on this song, they said, "Oh, you stole the song from the Marlboro commercial." We said, Sam Cooke's manager called and said, "You stole it from a song Sam had called, Do You Like Good Music?" And said, "Okay." So look, we all fighting over it. Said, "What about the Magnificent Seven? Didn't you all steal it from them?" And then Otis came up with a gospel group out of Louisiana that had a song called "Do You Like Good Religion?" And so Otis told Santa Fe, "You don't tell on me, I won't tell on you. We'll take this song." And they did. But Otis was a charming, loyal person who was very close to the members of the Philadelphia chapter here. It was not unusual for him to drop by the lodge up there to borrow some money to get gas in the car so he could make his next gig. And the brothers were always loaning money. And he remained exceptionally close to him. Recently, I heard rumor that he was a janitor. Well, that was not true. No doubt, he probably lended a hand cleaning the lodge a couple of times because he did that for the love of the brothers and for the love of my brother, Phil. But he was never a janitor. We used to have a saying that I'm surprised is no longer used. It's called, "You can't go no straighter than Philadelphia Theta." And it was popular during the years I was there. But during some of the parties where Otis played for him, he would shout out this saying, you know, and he would shout it from the stage, and he'd receive a loud round of applause and yells back at him about saying it. It made him feel good. So he'd probably say it at that party, he'd probably say it 2 or 3 times during the night, make everybody scream. And he was playing the ATO fraternity house in Auburn, Alabama. He got caught up in the excitement of the gig. "You can't go no straighter than Philadelphia Theta." Needless to say, we didn't play the ATO house. You know, Otis was so close with the guys here in Macon that I used to joke that he was an honorary Philadelphia. And even after I left Mercer, I tried to help out with their social event. One year, when Ed Crawley told me they were struggling with the rush with limited budget, and I jumped on the phone and rounded up Johnny Jenkins and the Pine Top. And Ed said, "Oh, we can't afford them." And I said, "Well," I replied, "how about if they play for free?" And so that was great. And he was very delighted, and the rest of the fraternity was too. Well, we scheduled them for Rush, and then Otis returned in from a national tour, and he overheard me planning the event for Johnny and them to play at the Philadelphia House. And he jumped on board and said, "As much as they did for me, how about adding me and my band and my show and review too?" Man, Ed Crawley would not believe he was getting Johnny Jenkins, which ordinarily made $500 a night, but he was getting Otis Redding, the whole show and review, which made $2,000 a night, and it was not costing anything. The night was really special with Otis, 3 other male singers, 2 different female singers, and close to 15 musicians playing. they played on and on and on until the police came over and said it was time for the party to be over. It was a reunion for Otis and Johnny because they had played together in the beginning, and they hadn't been together for about 2 years. It was like a homecoming to Otis to be back at the Find-Out Fun. When Phil returned from Germany, he asked me what I wanted to do. And I had kept the company running, and it was finally doing very well. And I replied that I wanted to stay on, and that I felt like I had earned a full partnership in the company, which he agreed to. He did ask me if I wanted to go back to Mercer, and I told him, I said, I can't see returning to school to learn how to make less money. Because we were doing very well at that time. Well, we set out to sign other artists and caught them in the developing stage. We signed Sam and Dave, and Percy Sledge, and Arthur Conley, and Eddie Floyd, and Clarence Clutter, and Johnny Taylor, and a number of other acts. And the people in New York, they got a real big kick out of it. I mean, the agencies there and in California said, these two white crackers think they can get into black music and do something. And, you know, it was really, we were butt end of a joke there for quite a while, you know. And, but we fooled them, and we continued to sign more and more artists, some of which were their artists. And in one particular agency, I cleaned his whole agency out except for Ray Charles and Jerry Butler. I left him nothing, you know. But this same guy had threatened to run us out of business. Our roster grew to 55 black recording artists, which is quite a stable. We were the world's largest black management company, with only Motown records being even close to us. And they didn't let their artists go out except on the Motown reviews, like twice a year. And my artists worked 5, 6 nights a week. And we usually did one-nighters, which means you play a day, then you get in the car, you ride 300, 400 miles overnight. Then you play again, and you got to pack up and leave right away and go to the next gig. It was a hard life, but it was fun too, you know. But after beginning to sign all these artists, we realized that we needed to expand and have more help, that it was too much for 2 of them. So where do we go to look for people that we wanted to hire? Divide out large. We hired Bud Wallace, Alex Hodge, Art Hapner, and Tom Porter, all 5 of us. And tragedy struck us in 1967 when Otis's plane crashed in Madison, Wisconsin. Our main star and our partner and our friend was gone. And all of our, once again, all of the New Yorkers and all the agencies and other companies immediately attacked us with, they are over with, history, gone. And neither Phil or I were quitters. We fought back twice as hard. We changed from rhythm and blues by, we had changed rhythm and blues, excuse me. We had changed rhythm and blues music, period, by making the promoters and the recording companies pay the artists. Until we arrived, many of the R&B artists never got proper accountings, if any. People like Little Richard, I mean, you know how many hit records Little Richard had in R&B. And at one time, I think he told me he got a total of like $3,000. This man tutored for it, and She Got It, and Miss Ann. I mean, it just list went on and on and on, you know. But they just didn't pay rhythm and blues artists in those years. They'd buy them a car or something. Of course, they buy the car, they only made the down payment, and they still had the car payments to make when they got through, you know. But it was sad, but they loved it when we got involved because they knew that something would happen with the act. They hated it when I came in to audit the record companies and make them pay them what they told them for the records. And I was experienced enough to know where to look to find all the hidden money. And so we actually changed the history of that, and it was something I was very, very proud of. But at this point, Phil and I decided it was time to surprise everybody by adventuring into white rock and roll. And We already had purchased a building down on Broadway to build a studio for Otis to produce other rhythm and blues artists like Arthur Coleman. Well, we agreed to continue this plan. Phil signed Dwayne Allman. I signed Bob Skaggs. And we began our career in what was later on named Southern Rock and Roll. To us, it was just rock and roll. We hired a full-time rhythm section for the studio where we could produce other artists. And Capricorn Records was born. Shortly after it was born, and we had several small releases, Phil and I began to have our differences about the direction of our company. I believe in taking one band and promoting it to the fullest. My heroes were Colonel Tom Parker with Elvis Presley. I also like Brian Epstein with the Beatles. And these two people had taken one hand, and they had made enough money that you didn't have to deal with 40 bands or 30 bands anymore. And I like that idea because I don't know if you ever even think about managing a band, but when you manage a band, you actually marry that band. You know, you got to deal with every problem they have. Their wives, their divorces, everything. And it gets to be pretty rough sometimes because in a band, you got maybe 7 different personalities to deal with, right? And I had one band that I had to put the musician and one musician in one end of the hotel and another one in the other end of the hotel so they wouldn't fight. And that was just, and they played like on stage, they go on stage and play a show and then they just separate again and didn't hardly even speak to each other. Well, we started with rock and roll, and I went out and auditioned 187 bands in 1970, and I got one band, and that was on this ship. And I said, this is going to be my rock and roll band, and I'm going to make it happen. Well, we were turned down by 9 different record companies, including Capricorn Records. My own brother turned me down. He's in Grant's Lounge, and he says, your lead singer's too cocky, he can't sing, the songs are weak, and they sound too much like the Allman Brothers. Now, I'm going to ask you to go home tonight and put on a Leonard Skinner record and then put on the Allman Brothers and tell me if they sound anything alike. Just because they both had a hot guitar player and southern songs. Most people did compare them to the Allman Brothers. But if you can imagine getting 9 different rejections on your band, it would make most people quit. And I can remember leaving Muscle Shoals one time, and I had been over there for 5 months to get a Leonard Skinner album done. And I was having to work on the midnight shift, and nobody else wanted to work. That's when I'd go in and work, because I'd get a cheaper rate. And I'd gone broke. I'm going broke, and I'm in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. I don't know if you've been in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Nobody smiles in Alabama. Smile at all if you go in a restaurant. Hey, how you doing today? Well, in the studio, that's about the way they move too. I remember Barry Becker telling me one time, says, Alan, you just get on out there and just hustle, ass off, work after day. He said, you would die of a heart attack by the time you get to 90. So Barry died a few years back. He said he's going to keep on chugging along, and he didn't make it. I'm happy to say I'm the longest, oldest living Walden male in history so far. And I'm praying that I make 70, which is in May, by the way. But I didn't give up on it. I just said, hey, I'm devoted. I remember standing there. We left Muscle Shoals. I had $100 in my pocket. And I get 40 miles outside of Muscle Shoals, and my Cadillac breaks down. And it's been pretty well worn out because we've been driving back and forth from Muscle Shoals to make it so much. And I think it was a fuel pump went out. So anyway, we're waiting on the tow truck, and I walk out there in the middle of a cotton patch. And I'm standing in the middle of this cotton patch, outside of Muscle Shoals. Man, I was ready to walk home. I mean, it was horrible feeling, I just thought the end of the world was riding on me real heavy. Out there in the cotton patch, I'm talking to God, and I'm shaking my hand, and Lord, I'm going to make this band happen no matter what. I'm coming home to face over $200,000 in debt, and the only thing I had was Leonard Skinner, which had got 9 rejections on them so far. And I came home and almost my whole staff was gone. All my people that were working with me had already quit or taken other jobs. And I'm all by myself and living in a log cabin out in Round Oak, Georgia, near the big old ranch. And I started booking Leonard Skinner as heavy as I could. I played a crazy club in Atlanta, Georgia called Pinocchio. I call it the death hole because it was so rough. Full of junkies. Almost everybody in there had a horrible drug habit. And one time when the club got busted, people were dumping all the stuff on the floor, getting rid of it. And 55 police came in. One guy had stolen a pistol from the policeman and ran into the club. So they raided the club and 55 police showed up. Well, Ronnie's trying to walk from the stage, and he always performed barefooted, and he says, man, on the way from the stage to the dressing room, I thought I was going to get a fix in the foot. There was so many syringes on the floor. And as I was walking across the stage, across the floor, I could feel all the pills crunching under my feet. But we stayed there until a doorman was dealing with 2 guys that had tried to crash through the door. And this guy was actually whipping 2 of the guys. He was handling 2 of them. The third one came up behind him with a 45 and took the whole back of his head off right there on the spot. And I said, that's it. I'm not going to play this club ever again, And we left. But while we were there, a guy named Al Cooper came in. And Al Cooper had several different hit projects with the Blues Project. He'd been in Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And he had a pretty good track record. Here he is, a New Yorker trying to move south and start a Southern life. And he loved Leonard Skinner. And we're in the studio together, and Al Cooper had a sweet sound to Leonard Skinner. We were dirty. We were the dirty white trash of the South. In one of our interviews in New York, they said, we understand you guys like alcohol. I said, you got a drink? I said, well, you've been seeing y'all kind of rowdy. I said, you want to fight? Where's your sister? And they said, well, with all that, kind of sound like a bunch of rednecks. Ronnie Benson said, and proud of it. Well, we were the redneck band from the South. And we believed in singing about juking and partying and fishing and things like that. I had told Ronnie, don't write about champagne and wine and all that stuff that you don't know anything about. Write about what's going on in your life. Well, they had that one song called Freebird. That's what made me sign the band, was Freebird. And so kind of try to put a wrap up on it here. All I can tell you is that Skinner sold close to probably 120 million records. And with the 2 records that I was involved in, we had pronounced his second helping. And they were multi-platinum records, and they only cost $32,000 a piece to produce. And where most bands go in the studio and they'll say they'll stay 2 months making a record, we made ours in 2 weeks. We were the most rehearsed band in the world. Came in. Leonard Skinner clocked in at their rehearsal house every day, weekday, in the morning, and they had to shut down at 5. They had a deal with the law to shut off at 5 o'clock so it wouldn't disturb all the people coming home from work. But they went to work every day in rehearsal. They were not the natural talent. They were rehearsed, and that they did very well. Well, to end it all, I scored with all of my artists together, received over 55 gold and platinum records. I call that a pretty good run, I'm very happy to say I was involved for those projects. And, Phil took the Allman Brothers. Let me put it this way, he had the Allman Brothers. I had Leonard Skinner. He had Marshall Tucker. I had the Outlaws. We controlled Southern rock. We owned it. And for about a year, 2 years time period, we could do no wrong. Phil even got involved with politics and helped Jimmy Carter get elected, We had the first Southern president, which I still think was a good move for the South. Both of us were inducted into the Georgia Music Hall of Fame. And I can tell you that, over the years, years, naturally being in the rock and roll business and staying out on the road, I developed a few rock and roll habits. And I didn't get into the hard drugs, but I love to smoke weed. I smoked weed for 39 years. And I love Budweiser beer. And when I went into treatment, I wasn't drinking for 18 beers every day. Along with a little weed, maybe a few lower-tab pain pills or cure the hangover or whatever. But I am happy to tell you that I have 14 years worth of sobriety under my belt now.
All right.
And I hope that, I don't know, I may have already said this, I hope that when my son does get to Mercer, I hope that he is invited to join Phi Delta Theta. Our roots were in Phi Delta Theta, and they are still in Phi Delta Theta. I'm going to leave you with one set of words. You can't go no straighter than Phi Delta Theta.